delegates from the last 2 days while I was feeding the chickens this morning. I'd like to read it to you just to let you know what you've missed. Just wanted to say, in case I don't get a chance, that this has most probably been the best conference I've ever been to, and over the years I've been to many all over Europe. Not many, not just from an organisational and content and delivery and timekeeping point of view, more on that in a second, but the spirit and uplifting nature of the whole event is so energising. With people in a conference like this, it really does give hope for future generations. So that's what you missed if you weren't here the last 2 days. But you're here for what I feel is the most important day, because I come from a commercial background. I'm not an ecologist by training. This is the day that really excites me, because this is where we get ecologists, conservationists talking to businesses. This is what I think we need to do to create the partnerships that are going to really achieve things for nature and people going forward. So for the people that weren't here the last couple of days, there's a couple of housekeeping things that you need to know about. So excuse me, just checking from my phone to get it all right. So if there is no fire alarm planned, so if one goes off, follow me. I'll be running out of that door there. But if you prefer, you can go that way. If you go out that door, you can go straight left and through the doors there, or back out into the lobby and left through the doors that we came in. If you go out that door, you can go along the balcony there and down the steps, and we will muster out on the grass out front. There is Wi-Fi here. There's posters on the wall. It's VMGT_customer, and the password is Villigati2024. As I say, they're on the wall there. There are plenty of toilets, so if you go out and turn right, there's a couple of toilets there, but if there's a queue there, go back down to the foyer and there's toilets either side on the ground floor and the first floor, so you shouldn't need to queue. I want to thank our sponsors again. So again, our main event sponsor, Visit Isle of Man, have been really important in helping us put this event on, and also our day sponsors, Lloyds Bank International. And I'm really pleased. Is Hannah in the room? Yeah, sorry, Hannah. We've got the Hannah banner on. So Lloyds Bank International fully fund our community ranger, Hannah. Yeah, the Hannah banner is my favourite and Hannah's least favourite. Don't know why. Really like to thank the team. I did it on the first day, but now I've seen what great job they've done. So Carmel, our head of engagement, get it right, okay? And her team, Hannah, Lucy, Marnie, Steve, who is our admin officer, has been running the live stream. And he also stepped in and did the Maxwell and Dolphin Watch presentation yesterday, which was amazing. And I want to know what other fish impersonations you could do. Just do the sunfish for us again. So, I mean, this is what you've missed if you've not done that. Right, delegate packs. So those joining us today will have got your delegate packs. They are a dry sack. We all live on islands. We all live near the sea. Hopefully you spend a bit of time in or near the sea. So we've given you a dry pack. We've tried to make it as sustainable as possible. Obviously they're plastic. Please don't lose them. They're branded. We don't want them turning up on a beach somewhere. But they were end of line, so they were heading for landfill, and we were able to save them and use them as our delegate packs for this event. Sustainability has been really important to us. If you don't want yours, please give it to someone who can use it. In there, you will find from Manx Wildlife Trust a friendship bracelet, which is made from Lockton wool. Lockton is our native wool breed on the island. They've been lovingly made by the Manx Wildlife Trust team. If you're really lucky, you'll get the one and only one that I made. Apologies if it doesn't last. But yeah, please do wear those. They're significant for us because they're us extending our friendship to you all in terms of how we're collaborating as islands. So that's really important for us. Right, so timing. Karen, one of our newest trustees. Please stand up, Karen, so everyone can see you. Karen has the timing sheets and the timing bell. Give us a ring, Karen. Go on, show everyone just how. And if you want to know the history of the bell, don't ask. I was going to say, conservationists especially can talk longer than they're supposed to, but it probably applies to business as well. When we talk about the subjects we love, we do talk a bit too long, and we've got a lot to fit in, so we will keep quite tightly to time, and I don't make apologies for that. But if you hear something interesting and they don't get to cover all their subject, then please do speak to them afterwards. That's why we've got nice long breaks, so you can network and talk to each other. We have posters on the wall here, so thank you to everyone who submitted posters. In the bottom right-hand corner of each poster is a QR code. You don't need to take a picture of the poster on your phone, just scan the QR code and that will take you to a PDF of it, and you can read it at your leisure at a later date or share it on social media or whatever you want to do with the poster. Out in the foyer here, we have Museum on the Move, Max National Heritage. Laura McCoy, their curator of natural history, has put together a very relevant collection of artifacts and specimens that are relevant to all the talks that we've had during the conference. So they're just out in the this first foyer here. And also in there is some pictures on the wall from Splashing. One of our MHKs, our members of the House of Keys, Michelle Hayward, runs a dive centre, and she runs an annual competition of underwater photography, and that's this year's entries that you can go and see out there. What else do I need to tell you? We have a shop at the back of the room. It's card-only payments, but have a look there. And if you're not sure how to do it, just speak to one of the MWT team. Mike has also got his kite book, and he's got a show offer. So if you want to buy a copy of his kite book, I can show you, but you can see it. Go and speak to Mike. Oh, excellent. So I need to pay you now. That's a shame. I don't know if there's many left, but we have some windfall apples at the back of the room. Help yourselves to those. They've come from Felicity, who was one of our founders, and her son Simon is now our current chair. So it's a nice family story about Manx Wildlife Trust, but they've come from her garden. So I think that's a nice, sustainable little snack for everyone. And finally, I think I can just say thank you very much for coming. We know this being the 25th Inter-Island Environment Meeting is the first time it's been outside the Channel Islands, and we know that we've dragged everyone from the Channel Islands and further afield to join us. So thank you for making that journey. I hope we've done it justice. And thank you to everyone else for joining us today as well. And thank you for the 24 previous years of IIEM that's built this amazing network of conservationists, ecologists, working across islands and obviously looking at the shared issues and opportunities that we have. So on to the day. So this morning we have a number of really good presentations for you, and I'm going to be inviting Lee up in a moment to chair this session, and then we'll be hearing from our keynote speaker, Jonathan, from Remarkable Partnerships, who both Lee and I have worked with. We've done their initial training, which was transformational, and I think for everyone in the room, both business and conservation will have some good lessons to take away from his talk this morning, so do give that a good listen. Excitingly for me, the high point for the whole event is our collaboration challenge this afternoon. So this is going to be a bit Dragon's Den-esque, but we're not allowed to say that. We're not even allowed to say Dragonfly's Den because that's Hannah's idea, so we can't steal that either. But this is going to be a panel of judges. People are going to come up here and pitch projects to them in 5 minutes. They're going to give a 5-minute Q&A, and then the judges will decide how they allocate a £2,000 prize fund. A fund, £2,000 prize fund, which was raised, it's not from the sponsorship, it was raised through the sale of tickets. So you have all contributed to that, and it will be up to the judges how they allocate that, whether they give it all to one project, which they think is worthy, or if they split it between two or more. For me, that's going to be really interesting. But it's not about the money. It's not even about the winning. It's about the process. I want to see conservationists and businesses finding a shared language, a shared purpose, that they can get together and create projects that are going to benefit people and nature, because that's what this is all about. So that's coming up later, hugely exciting. I will now shut up and I will hand over to my ex-boss, the previous CEO of Manx Wildlife Trust, Lee Morris, who is now Director International for the Wildlife Trust. Lee.
I am purring inside at this whole event here, and I'll be quick because I'm chairing. It's not about me, but I've got the microphone, and I'm going to do two things. One is I'm going to say thank you all for coming, particularly those people that have come from the Channel Islands. When I arrived on the Isle of Man in 2020, I went to my first inter-island meeting virtually, COVID, and then I went to the first one face-to-face in Alderney to engage with Alderney Wildlife Trust, and I was just blown away. I mean, it's just like the most amazing thing that didn't have a very big digital footprint. So the following 2 years, Graham and I and Lara went to Sark, and then we went to the one on Jersey last year, and Hannah and Ali went. And so now it's here, and it's fantastic that it's here. And I really hope that there's a great delegation from the Isle of Man goes to Guernsey next year and really keeps this connection within the islands. I'm going to do one other thing before I get to the session chair. There's lots of thanks, but we need to thank Graham. So I'm embarrassing now. There's at least one person in the room that understands football. So I remember when I handed my notice in earlier this year in my chair as he walked down the stairs, smiling and thinking, thank God for that. He looked back and he said, I remember when Jurgen Klopp left Liverpool, He said people were a bit disappointed, he said, but the year after the bloke won the Premiership. And so I think in this guy we've got someone that's going to win the Premiership, and the best thing I did was leave it to him. So it's wonderful. I am delighted that we're doing this around businesses today. And there's just so much opportunity, and myself and Jodie are doing a talk this afternoon, and we'll touch more on that then. So I'll bite my lip for now. But it is wonderful to welcome Jonathan. And as Graham said, we both did the course with Jonathan, and his whole, I'm not going to do your talk for you, his whole mission in life is to bring corporate businesses and charities in their broadest sense together to form partnerships, remarkable partnerships. So with that, let's welcome Jonathan to the stage and to tell us about
I'm a bit shorter than me, I think. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Graham. Thank you, everybody, for having me here today. I'm just a corporate fundraiser from London, so I want to thank everybody for making me feel so welcome in the Isle of Man. I've never been here before, and I was made to feel so welcome by as I guess I see you, all of you kind of wildlife folk yesterday. Thank you for welcoming me in. And I've really gone and done it. I went on one of the excursions yesterday, for those of you who didn't do any of the excursions yesterday, but nobody could have convinced me that I would be coming to the Isle of Man to come and see wallabies. But that's exactly what I did yesterday. So now I'm a true, what do they call it, Maxi? Yeah. Okay, so thank you for having me here today. I'm going to tell you some stories, and I'm going to talk to you now about why I believe that corporate partnerships can be an incredible power and partner for the environment moving forwards. But I just wanted to go for a bit of a raise of hands first of all. When we think about business and the environment, can I get you to raise your hands if you think that business are part of the problem? Yeah? And now can I put your hands down? Now I want you to raise your hands and say if you think business can be part of the solution. Yeah, great. So, and I think that is an interesting way that we often see business. But what I want to do is talk to you this morning to convince you more about them being part of the latter rather than part of the former. And I want to start by just telling you a story about the day my dad said freeze. And I was 11 years old, and we were on holiday in Yorkshire Dales. And we often went to the holiday in the Yorkshire Dales, and we were staying in a town, market town, beautiful market town called Grassington. I don't know if any of you know it. And we were off for another walk that day. My dad loved walking, our dog loved walking. So I was there with my parents. And I remember this day very distinctly. It will stay with me forever, one particular moment on this walk. And we were walking across the Dales. It was beautiful. I think it was quite a sunny day, not like this outside. And we just climbed over a stile. And there was a line of trees ahead of us. And then my dad suddenly said, freeze. And we all froze. We didn't move. Even the dog froze. And I was looking at my dad, and he slowly lifted his binoculars to his eyes. And he was looking above the line of trees. And he said, look, it's a kestrel. And I lifted my eyes and I could see it. And it was hovering above the line of trees. And then it swooped and it was gone. And I just thought that was magnificent. And that memory has stayed with me all those years, some, 45 years later. But now my dad has developed dementia. And that means that his memory is wasting away. And it makes my precious memory of that day even more important. And that's why I think we need to protect wildlife. Because if we don't protect wildlife, then the children of tomorrow won't be able to have those memories of their parents. That's why wildlife matters to me. So I'm going to tell you about why corporate partnerships are a major opportunity for environmental organisations. As Graham says, this is my passion subject. This is my mission in life, to help companies and charities partner together to achieve incredible change in the world and deliver exponential benefits for each other. I'm going to talk to you about how partnerships with companies can generate those vital funds, fundraising for your environmental organisations. I'm going to talk to you about how it can also help you increase awareness, which is vital to convince people of the importance of this cause. And I'm going to tell you about how ultimately you can partner with companies to achieve your mission. And I'm going to describe those through 3 stories that I love and I hope you love too. So the first story is about the partnership that put the rainforest in your bathtub. Is anybody familiar with this partnership? The partnership between Lush and SOS Orangutans. What they did together was they created an orangutan-shaped bath bomb. And they sold it in Lush stores across 7 countries. And it sold like wildfire. In 6 weeks, it was sold out. And it raised £346,000 for Sumatran Orangutan Society. There was a lovely sign in one of the stores I saw, buy it now before they're gone. And I thought it was very powerful. But the difference they made didn't just stop there at 346,000. The magic happened when you put the bath bomb in your bath at home. No, don't worry, I'm not going there. So you put the bath bomb in your bath, and then what happened was, floating to the top came a QR code. And when you got out the bath and you grabbed your smartphone and scanned the QR code, what it did was it took you to a landing page. And at that landing page, they were playing the sounds of the rainforest that your donation had just helped protect. And as you're on that page, you could also sign up to get more information about Sumatran Orangutan Society, and you could sign up to be a supporter. So this partnership actually brought on board thousands of new individual regular supporters for Sumatran Orangutan Society. As I'm sure you'll agree, this orangutan-shaped bath bomb was a game changer. The second story, I want to go further afield and take you to Thailand. A different kind of company from Lush, Marriott Hotels. And what Marriott Hotels do is they've created the hotel that turns guests into reef protectors. Now, in the Phuket area, there are 280 hotels, but they worked out that only 20 of those hotels were operating in an environmentally conscious way. So Marriott made it their job. They made it their goal to be the most sustainable hotels in the area. So what they did, as you can see, is outside of the hotel, in the grounds, right near the beach, they created a reef education centre so that everybody in the hotel who stayed there, every guest could go and see the centre, find out about how they were protecting the reef, discover the magic of the reef. But they didn't just stop there. What they did was they also encouraged guests to go diving in the water at high tide so that they could see the beauty of the coral reef for themselves. And this hotel has gone further and further. They're protecting sharks, they're protecting turtles, and they're planting trees as well. So it's an incredible role model showing, out of 280 who are, 260 who are not performing well, they were really shining the light and showing the way in Thailand. So my third example brings us again to a partnership that's more present here in the UK. but also around the world. And Sodexo is one of the biggest companies in the world, and they have a partnership with WWF. And their partnership is saving the planet one plate at a time. So just imagine this. So Sodexo is often one of those hidden companies. They run services, they run canteens, they run restaurants in businesses and schools, in government organisations. To give you an idea of it, in just the UK alone, Sodexo feeds 1 million people every day. Now imagine then how many people they're feeding every day across the world. When WWF saw that, they said this is an incredible opportunity to change how the way that we eat, to make sure that how people eat is much more sustainable. So what they did was they worked with the chefs at Sodexo, they worked with the experts at Sodexo, and they started to alter the menu. They started to offer their customers, their business people, their students, and members of the public more sustainable solutions. And that's what's happening now. Gradually, they are making meals much more sustainable, much lower in carbon impact. And they're not just doing that at Sodexo, they are creating change across their whole industry, because they're influencing other companies in the food service industry to change the way that we eat, to change the food. So I think you'll agree that is an incredible partnership. They've actually been partnering together for over 10 years, and their partnership just keeps getting bigger and bolder and braver, so that now Sodexo and WWF, their goal is to fix the food system together. This isn't just about what we eat, this is about how it's also sourced and purchased by companies such as this as well. So hopefully you can see through these three examples, really different examples, the impacts that business can make for charities. A huge impact on fundraising as demonstrated by SOS Orangutans, a huge impact on awareness as demonstrated between Marriott Hotels and the charities they work with in Thailand, and a huge impact actually on mission by Sodexo and WWF. But we at Remarkable Partnerships we wanted to go further. And it's easy to understand as I give you these examples, how great these are for charities. But I want to tell you, particularly for the business people in the room, I think you know this already, that these partnerships are incredible for business as well. So we did some research recently called Profitable Partnerships, where we wanted to find proof that these partnerships also deliver commercial benefits for companies. Because if they do, if we can find that proof, that makes them more sustainable. We can all go to business and say, come on, look, this is great for your business. Do it, but don't just do it piecemeal. Don't do it peripheral. Do it where you're all in. And we found this research from two analysts in 2017. And what they did was they carried out a study of the 2,000 world's biggest companies. And they found that their analysis found that giving more to charity leads to greater financial performance. And this isn't just correlation, this is causation. And the reason, the science that explains it, is that philanthropy, that good making, lifts all of their relationships. Their colleagues, their shareholders, their customers all love the brand more. The giving adds social impact, it adds social value to their most important relationships as a business and makes them more successful. I think that is evidence that hits the bottom line of business. And I want to finish today by just giving you, I didn't want to leave you all salivating over corporate partnerships. I wanted to give you 3 recommendations on how to go and build them. The first one, and this is what I worked with Lee and Graham on the training, is identify your target prospects. It's very easy when you go and want to go and approach companies to have what I call the spreadsheet of doom, right? To have a spreadsheet of over 100 companies who it is that you could go and approach. And my experience of, I've had my own spreadsheets of doom, is that actually they are overwhelming and they cause paralysis. and I only probably get down to about number 3 on the list every day. So actually what happens is I feel shame, and the shame is fairly demotivating. So what we recommend is, counterintuitively, you have just a small number of target prospects, and you work out the ones where you have the greatest relationships, where they have the best fit with your organization, your best shared purpose, but also they have the greatest resources to make a difference. Secondly, I encourage you as wildlife organizations, as leaders of those organizations, to really focus on the magical element. This is what great salespeople do. And if you work for a wildlife organization, I would suggest you're not only a fundraiser, I believe you are also a salesperson. You are a salesperson for wildlife, selling it to business so that together you can change it. And I recommend that the best thing you can do when you meet with a company, rather than blurt on about your organization saying we were founded in 1867 and we've got 236 projects and we help 260 wading birds. I mean, you know, that's really dull and boring. What you want to do is focus on them. Start your meetings by saying, how's business? It's the best question you can ask a company. How's business? Because they love it. They love talking about their business. You speak to business people, they love telling you how their company is doing right now. Yes, there's a cost of living crisis, but we're forging ahead. We're making sales. We're doing well. But the other key bit you want to do is, okay, that's great to hear, but what are some of the challenges you're facing? Because I think then they will share the gold dust. They will share the thing that you can build your whole partnership around, which is their pain. I remember speaking to a law firm recently in London, and they said to me, Jonathan, it's interesting you ask what are our challenges. Our challenge is we have 33% attrition. So that means 33% of their workforce leave the business every year. That is a massive drain on resources, but probably every time they lose a lawyer, it costs them about 80 grand. So you find that problem, be it they're worried about their profile, they're struggling to maybe stand out against their competitors, perhaps they're struggling to retain staff or attract staff, maybe they're struggling to retain customers. You want to find that magical detail and then propose your partnership opportunity with your wildlife organization, your incredible organization, as a solution to that. Well, we have the perfect opportunity. We're working with dolphins, working with wallabies to help solve your solution. Because honestly, I see your organizations across the room. I've talked to you. And you might not see it, but I see that you are standing on a mountain of value. You are standing on a mountain of value to give these companies. But the challenge is that when you're standing on your mountain, all you see is everybody else's mountain. All you see is WWF's mountain. All you see is Sumatran orangutan's mountain. Well, the mountain of Manx Wildlife Trust and all the other wildlife trusts and organizations in the room, I want to tell you your mountains are high. So pitch your opportunity as a solution to their problem. And lastly, just to bring me back to the start of my talk, I think one of the most important things you can do to bring companies on board is to tell emotionally engaging stories. I believe that you have incredible stories you can share about wildlife, the habitat, the environment, particularly about how it relates directly back to us as human beings and memories for the next generation, or your own stories. The trick is to find the one that moves you, or when you tell it, the one that to your colleagues, the one that brings tears to their eyes, and you share it too. It's not about sharing a story from here, it's about sharing a story from here. Share it emotionally, not in a head way. So those are my 3 recommendations. and I want to thank you for hearing me here this morning.
I'm managing time, but the first hand gets a question. One at the back. That's it.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. I was going to say, how's business?
It's great, actually. I've been taught to say it's great because the more you say it, the greater it goes.
So I'm head of global policy at RSPB, and one of the things we have when we work with businesses is ethical places that businesses are in. So the thing that I'm looking to do is have those discussions with businesses of how we can help them, but how can we help them to move more towards where we are ethical as well? Like, do you have any tips or experience around that?
Yeah, well, it's a brilliant question. And we worked with some of the team at RSPB, and they've been on our training. Lizzie from RSPB came on our training recently, and she went away like an Exocet missile from the training, and went and landed a partnership with Tesco, and landed a partnership with the Mates, which has raised you over 5 million. Is that right? How about that for a round?
Right.
But in a way, I guess if you think about Lizzie's experience at RSPB, she's going to partner with Tesco, and I'm sure there are people at RSPB who would kind of go, not so sure about Tesco. They're one of the bad guys, right? I'm not so sure I feel happy about RSPB partnering with them. So you're absolutely spot on. But I think exactly as you say, Lizzie said we're going to partner with them, not because they're going to create incredible change for RSPB and for wildlife, but because we're going to create change for them. So I saw a really brilliant reporter from the New York Times speak. And he's an author of the book. Look him up. He's a very smart guy. Used to be a reporter for the New York Times. He's written a book called The Persuaders. And he said, I think the challenge with us in our lives at the moment is perhaps we've lost the power of persuasion. It's easy to think about, say, Donald Trump supporters and write them off. That might be the first time he's been mentioned at this conference. But anyway, it's easy to write them off, right? But that doesn't mean they're bad people. They might be 60% Trump, 40% Biden. So it means that we just need to speak to the 40% more and raise that up and help them see maybe some of the flaws in their belief about supporting Trump. So I think, in answer to your question, I think the most exciting partnerships are the ones where we're partnering with the companies that are on the edge, where the companies are part of the problem but could be part of the solution. And I think the role for us because I see you myself as one of you as well, is environmental organizations, is to be brilliant persuaders. And definitely to read that book, it's absolutely brilliant. Just to recognize that the best partnerships are the ones where everybody changes.
I'm going to manage time. I'm doing it badly, Graham. Sorry. Round of applause. That is a crux issue. So I'm going to just give a tiny little bit of addition to that. I think it is a crux issue. Me personally, on that scale, and I've sat on boards and in leadership teams. I sit in a leadership team now at the Wildlife Trust, and my colleague knows this. I'm on the spectrum of, bluntly, take the cash and work with these businesses, because I've met many, and many of you in this room are really passionate. But businesses aren't bad. It's not greenwashing. You know, we all drive cars and live on our, and live in houses and eat food. And businesses, there's some wonderful people, and that's why this day, as Graham said, is so exciting that we're bringing people together. So please continue that conversation later with Jonathan. That whole ethic thing is absolutely, I'm not going to call it the elephant in the room. I've called it the elephant in the room. It is, but pragmatism and finding solutions, and it's get away from greenwashing. So I'm going to introduce the next speaker now. The next speaker is Derek, and I pinged Derek an email. I said, it'd be really cool to get someone from Lundy Island to the IIEM. Would you fancy? And Lundy Island are here, and I believe that, Derek, you're going to keep coming. So without further ado, Derek Green from Lundy Island.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Do you hear me at the back? Yeah. Yeah, great. I just, first of all, Lee, thank you for the invite. Blissfully unaware of this conference, but delighted to be here, particularly with my colleague Rob Waterfield, who's the island manager from Lundy. So that doesn't leave very many people on the island this morning. So I hope they're doing all right. We've had a wonderful 3 days and picked up lots of information, met lots of great people, hopefully sold a few trips to Lundy on the way. We had a great trip to the farm yesterday, and I've got the bracelet on, and I've now taken up knitting as a hobby. So thanks to everybody that organised that. I'm going to talk to you about Lundy and a project that we're running at the moment with the National Trust in partnership. So it's not quite corporate, but I just need to give you a little bit of background before I talk to you about that. And this is our renewable energy project. So most people in the room, I'm guessing, will have heard of Lundy, but probably haven't been there. Is that right? Anybody been to Lundy before? Got 3, 4 hands in the room? Okay. So I'm going to persuade you to increase that number. You'll all be knocking on the door very soon. Lundy, as you may know, is a very small island. It sits in the Bristol Channel, and I'll show you a map in a minute if you don't know where it is. The background behind Lundy is that it's privately owned and has been for a number of years until 1969, when it was sold and put up for auction. And thankfully, the National Trust bought Lundy in 1969 with a generous donation from a chap called Jack Hayward. Immediately, Lundy was handed over to the Landmark Trust, who were formed in 1965. They took a huge gamble in taking on a 60-year lease of Lundy, and with the thoughts of rebuilding it because it had been neglected terribly after the war. The Landmark Trust then went about rebuilding Lundy, and over the next 50 years spent a small fortune in partnership in some ways with the National Trust. Now, I came along in 2004 and took over the management of Lundy, and you probably realise that my accent is not from North Devon. I'm a very keen diver. I've got a shipbuilding background, and you'll see in a minute why both of those are relevant to Lundy. One of the things that struck me when I came to Lundy at first, that it was running on a shoestring. We'd run on diesel generators. The road was falling down. The ship needed more than a bit of welding. Clearly, it needed some huge capital investment in order to future-proof it. And if you've been to Lundy, you'll know of all the wonderful wildlife and designations that we've got there. So I'm going to tell you about those in just a second. But the important thing for me was, how do we take this forward? The island just about washes its face financially. Some years, other years, if it's bad weather, a bit like this, feels like home this morning actually, looking out the window, because this is typical sort of Lundy weather. And after a number of years, it was fairly obvious we needed a huge capital injection. So the lease of the island with the National Trust was due to expire in 2029. In 2017, I had a conversation with them and said, we need to bring this forward because we need to renegotiate the terms of this lease because we need some help here. It was quite clear that National Trust were quite nervous about the meeting, but it turned out they were very supportive. In the end, in 2019, we got a new lease for 50 years, and we got a commitment from the National Trust as the landlord to provide things like power, water, access, and all those other fundamental things that you may expect a landlord to provide. So the first thing we looked at was our water capacity. Lundy has to produce its own drinking water through rainfall. We have to produce our own electricity through generators, and we provide all the transport. But the island's water capacity was in a bad state of repair, let's say, and so we started to repair the water tanks on the island. That went fairly smoothly, but then we started to turn to power. The island's 3 generators were falling to bits, I think it's fair to say. We were on a bit of a shoestring some winters with just 1 generator, and so we started to look at how we could replace the generators, but actually future-proof it as well. So the renewable energy project was born, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But how did we persuade the National Trust to invest quite heavily? Well, Lundy's a very special place. Might get the clicker. That one. Here we go. If you haven't been there before, this is the landing bay and the jetty where the ship lands and bringing day trippers and staying visitors. This is the south of the island where most of the population live. Okay, there are 30 residents, 28 today, and 4 summer volunteers. We rely heavily on our volunteers through the summer to help us do the work across the island. We've got 24 self-contained properties in the campsite, which means we've got 136 visitor spaces. Okay, the island's open pretty much 11 months of the year. We only shut for 3 weeks in January, where we do a lot of maintenance, shut the pub, deep clean it, and shut the shop, that type of thing. We get up to 20,000 visitors per year, so the footfall is quite heavy. That's made up of 15,000 day trippers and about 5,000 staying visitors. Okay. If you don't know where Lundy is, we're situated at the edge of the Bristol Channel where we meet the Atlantic, so we're very exposed. It's quite difficult to get to Lundy. Typically, like this today, the ship cancelled and the emergency helicopter that we would bring in to get people on and off couldn't fly because of bad visibility. So we're actually sailing now as we speak to get people back off of Lundy who were meant to return yesterday. So the island itself is about 15 miles from Hartland Point, where we fly from in the winter because it's too rough to sail the ship. And we're about 23 miles from the ports of Bideford and Ilfracombe. Those of you guys from Jersey and maybe Alderney will have heard of the Landmark Trust because we also manage and own Fort Clonk and Peters Tower on Jersey. The Landmark Trust will get 200 buildings nationally, and on Lundy we've got 24 of those properties. This is our ship, MS Oldenburg. It's owned by the Lundy Company. Okay, so I manage that. We've got a crew of 10, and those guys through the summer sail 3 times a week to the island. In the winter, they swap hats and they become ground crew for the helicopter service. That lets us keep them employed 12 months of the year, so it's a sustainable sort of employment position. So what's so special about Lundy? Well, we've heard lots about designations and fantastic work that's been happening around the islands over the last couple of days. Lundy is a triple SI for many features. We're also an MPA. It's an MCZ. We were the first voluntary marine reserve in the UK and the first statutory marine reserve in the UK and the first marine conservation zone. We're also an SAC and we've got a no-take zone, which was the first in the UK as well, set up in 2003. So our marine protection is exceptionally high. I like to think we've led the way in marine protection in the UK. Lots of other people watching what we do. We've got a very robust marine management plan, and I think that's helped us shape the future of marine protection across the country. Well, on the island, we've also got 44 scheduled monuments. We're part of the Heritage Coast, and we're also within the North Devon UNESCO Biosphere. And interestingly, just had an email yesterday to say that we're going to become part of the core area of the biosphere because of all the special features that Lundy has as well. Andy Bell, who's the manager for the North Devon Biospheres off to China in a couple of weeks to press that case. So I'm hoping that he'll come back with good news in a couple of weeks. Lundy is also a dark sky discovery site because we have no light pollution. We switch our power off at midnight. We bring the generators back on at 6 in the morning. It's a wonderful place for stargazing and all those other things, like catching Manx shearwaters in the middle of the night as well, which you'll be familiar with. And of course, Lundy had an eradication programme in 2003, and apparently I'm not allowed to say the word, but we don't have any long tails here. And as a result, our puffin numbers were in single figures back in 2003, and something had to be done. People may know that Lundy is actually Old Norwegian for Puffin Island, so it was a bit of a no-brainer. We now have over 40,000 nesting seabirds, and we've just joined the Bird Observatory Council. Again, we're in our sort of probation year, and hopefully in January we'll get that signed off. So I've got 5 minutes left, so I better hurry up. We've also got 200 Atlantic grey seals, 285 soy sheep, hence the interest in the farm yesterday, 180 sika deer, 22 feral goats, and of course we've got our endemic Lundy cabbage. So lots and lots of things to celebrate. And part of the reason why the National Trust felt we've got to invest in this place because it's so special and difficult to get to. But hey, the Lundy company have taken all the risk. We'll give them the money, let them deliver the project. So what is the project? And it's basically we're trying to decarbonise that island. If you look here on the top left, this is our existing diesel generators. Fuel for the generators has to be shipped across on the Oldenburg, transferred into the Bowser, you can see in the middle of the picture there, and then transferred up the beach road behind a tractor and transferred into these large holding tanks. It's hugely risky. We've got an MTA and a triple SI, so it's a bit of a no-brainer in terms of trying to reduce the amount of diesel that we're burning on the island. So we've started some efficiency improvements already in the last 12 months or so. We've put in modern controls. We've improved the visibility. We've improved the monitoring of the power station. We've got a company that sits in Glasgow now. You can dial in online and they can tell us and tweak the system to make it run as efficiently as possible. We've also got backup from a company of engineers in South Devon who can dial in and diagnose any problems with the system, which we never had 12 months ago. The programme looks a bit like this. So phase one is efficiency works, control upgrades, heating upgrades, and 2 pilot projects to improve the heating in some of the properties by means of more efficient storage heaters and air source heat pumps, and monitoring from a distance, as I mentioned before. We're now at the pre-consultation and planning stage with the local council, and we hope to go to tender in the winter. Hopefully, if we get approval, funding from the National Trust for the main project, they won't decide on that until we've got full planning. This is how they work through their stage and gateway process. And by next spring, we hope that we'll be putting a shovel in the ground and starting some of the works. October 26 is our current target for the first of the renewables to take over from diesels. So how did we decide what we were going to do? Well, we looked at all options for the island. Number one, we could have just replaced the diesels like for like and continued just to burn diesel. We could have added solar, or we could have just put a wind turbine up. But if you look at option number 4 here, it's by far and large the most efficient renewable system for Lundy, and it gives the most cost reduction apart from anything else. Of course, the amount of carbon that we're pumping into, carbon dioxide that we're pumping into the atmosphere is reduced highly. So it's the chosen option, and that's the system we're going for. We used to have an air generator on the island, and this is indicative of what we're hoping to put back on there again. Took a trip up to the Fair Isle. They've done a similar scheme. It sits between Shetland and Orkney, and they've been running that quite successfully for a number of years. So we've got confidence that system will work for us. The system is going to include 100 kilowatt of wind, 400 kilowatt of solar, and a large battery to store 1 megawatt of power, and that will give us a couple of days of energy, if nothing. If we have no wind, no solar, and the generator's not running. This is what it might look like when we put a turbine up on the horizon. You can see the old light there on the top of the island. If you've been to Lundy before, you've probably climbed that and sat in the deck chair, looking around, listening to shearwaters. And this is how it might look on the ground from the top of the old line. This is the plan of where the components are going to go. In order to get to this stage, of course, we've had to do an awful lot of surveys and consultations. You can see the list of all of the surveys that we completed over the last couple of years. And the guy put this slide together for me as well. I just said, remind them that we love our max shearwaters too. There's over 5,000 shearwaters nesting on Lundy, so we've got a big chunk of them. But we are looking out for the Balearic one as well. I think we had one sighting in recent years. So That brings me to the end of my presentation. If you want to know a little bit more, you can look on the website and I'll drop me an email. And we'd be delighted to hear from you. But we very much look forward to working with you guys in the future. But in the meantime, we're off to dig up a dolphin. So thank you very much.
I've got the con, so I'm going to go one question again. First hand gets it. Richard.
Richard Solomon, I work for Depot on the Isle of Man, the Government Department for Environment. I'm interested, you mentioned goats there. We have feral goats here, and a bit like the wallaby situation, some people think we should be looking after them, other people think they should all be removed. I'm interested in knowing what's the attitude to goats on Lundy.
Yeah, so along with the soy and the sika, the goats are all considered feral stock. We have a cull program, very active cull program. We've got a game larder on the island as well. Rob and I pretty much are the government of Lundy, so we get a very quick decision-making process running. And we've got 7 guys culling animals at the moment. Every year we have a feral stock count. We set a target for what we think, in collaboration with the National Trust in Natural England, about what the stocking level should be. Goats have always been on Lundy's. They are a feature interest for our visitors. I mean, the breed is wing nuts. They've got these massive, great ornamental horns, and they're lovely to see. We need to keep them under control, but they do have a place on Lundy. So, culling is our way of dealing with those. But everything that we shoot on Lundy goes through our game larder and it goes through the tavern on the island. So it's a sustainable sort of product for us. And people understand that because we give them lots of interpretation. We tell them how we do it. And we've actually had quite a lot of vegetarians and vegan people who actually eat the Lundy produce because they can see where it's come from. So, for us, controlled culling seems to work.
Thank you.
Oh, someone have a 20-minute Q&A around that, but I'm not going to. What I would say is, isn't that amazing how one island that's not been to this event before is a microcosm of issues that I know are in probably, there's an island not far off the southern tip of the Isle of Man where there's a parallel world there, isn't there, with the Manx National Trust and the ambitions and renew. It isn't just for me, just a moment to think about the relevance of each other and the value of getting everyone in the same room and sharing. It's staggering. I'm delighted to now introduce our next speaker. I'm almost tempted to say it doesn't need introduction, but Claudine Blamey from Aviva. And I'm just going to do with both my new hat in the Wildlife Trust and also with Manx Wildlife Trust, just to give my shout out for what a staggering project and working with Aviva has done for the island here, but also much wider for the whole of the Wildlife Trust Federation in terms of temperate rainforest restoration. It's just a staggering difference. And, we went to Glen Aldin yesterday, 1,200 acres of wonderful glen that's going to be reforested by Graham and his team in perpetuity to bring back nature and biodiversity and carbon in the Isle of Man. So staggering. So it really is synchronicity that Claudine and her team are here on the island now at the same time as the inter-island meeting's taking place, and that she's taking time out to come and speak to you today. So, Claudine.
I wasn't sure what picture was going to end up there from yesterday, but it's this one. I was hoping it'd be broader, kind of rest of the team there as well. But lovely to be here this morning to see you and to talk to you. And thank you for the invite. But so I'm Claudine Blamey. I look after all things sustainability at Aviva. And yesterday, the team and I, they're here, went and had a look around, and what an amazing day it was. Just very emotional, actually. And I found out 2 things which really stuck with me, is that how incredible that we are restoring this the project here in the Isle of Man. And what I didn't know was that it's 1.5% the land at the Isle of Man. And that's just an incredible fact. it just shows the scale, and that's just the beginning because there is so much more across the UK. And then the other thing was we were walking around and we came across this mushroom, which was a black mushroom. And someone in the team said, "Oh, what's that? That's a funny looking mushroom." And I think it's called King Alfred's cake, which I didn't know about. And then another member of the team said to David, "So is that edible?" And he said, "Everything's edible once." So, and that's going to stick with me definitely going forward. So I just wanted to say thank you from yesterday for what we saw, and to the team. So David, Stan, Tara, the whole of the Wildlife Trust team that came along with us. Thank you so much. We really, really enjoyed the day yesterday. What we did see yesterday, though, is really redoubled, I don't know if that's a word, but redoubled my confidence and optimism in what this powerful partnership is all about. And I'm going to talk to you a bit about this partnership and just generally partnerships that we've got with other organisations as well, and why I think we've learned from them and what's been really successful and what kind of makes a good partnership. So let me back up a little bit because I want to explain what is a financial services company doing something like this. Why does it matter to us? Which I think Jonathan mentioned is a really important element of why a partnership might work. I think my boss says this really well. So Amanda Blanc, our CEO, would put it much better than I could ever say. But she says that future health of our business depends entirely on a sustainable future, and particularly an insurance business. I probably don't have to argue this too hard with this audience here, but let's just be clear. Acting sustainably isn't just the right thing to do, which of course it is, but for Aviva, Amanda says that sustainability is one of our central pillars. So she's integrated it into our strategy, our overall strategy. It isn't something we do on the side, but it is really integrated into everything we do, alongside things like making profit and efficiency. So, but insurers like us are in the business of managing risk. And we're at the sharp end of the twin threat, climate change and nature loss. And those are risks that we have to manage on a daily basis on behalf of our customers. So more frequent, more extreme weather events will clearly harm our customers and threaten the companies we invest in and on behalf of. So in extreme scenarios, unchecked climate change endangers the viability of our business. And we know that, and our CEO knows that. So there's also a massive upside if we get all of this right. So that kind of leads us to creating these sorts of partnerships to actually take action and do something on the ground. So a few years back, Aviva announced that we're going to be net zero company by 2040. We're the only financial company that's ever said 2040. And not just in our operations, because most companies say, yes, we're going to be net zero in our operations, but also in our investments and all our underwriting as well. It's all that wind from yesterday. And we're also committed to helping the UK to become the most resilient country in the world when it comes to climate change impacts. So part of that involves accelerating the country's move to a lower carbon economy, but it's also about what we do in terms of adapting to climate change impacts. And we see this every day, don't we? There's drought, there's floods, there's overheating, and all of these things we know, I'm an environmental scientist, we know that's going to increase over time. So that brings us here, because one way we can improve resilience it's to invest in nature-based solutions. Protecting and restoring habitats and ecosystems that remove carbon from the atmosphere, but at the same time, lowering the risk and impact of extreme heat, flood risks, etc. But also at the same time, increasing biodiversity and helping communities is the and thing that is really important, and not just the one element. And as an obvious habitat to focus on was temperate rainforests. So how did we get here? In terms of the partnership, it's been an interesting and fantastic journey, I must say. So we wanted to do something to reverse the decline of temperate rainforests. As we know, there's only 1% of the UK that's now temperate rainforest, and they used to cover the whole of the west side of the UK. So we kicked off our partnership with the Wildlife Trust a couple of years ago. We committed 38 million to this partnership. This had funded the purchase and first steps towards restoring sites up and down the west coast of the British Isles. So Devon, North Wales, here in the Isle of Man, the Lake District, the Yorkshire Dales, and we are going to carry on. It's not going to stop there. So we wanted to reflect, and I particularly wanted to reflect on some elements of this connection with the Wildlife Trust, and just let you know how powerful and how valuable this has been. And so in the honour of being here in this beautiful location on the Isle of Man, I'm going to take my inspiration from the three-legged symbol. And the symbol, I think, is about resilience, which is very apt in terms of what we're talking about here. So whichever way you throw it, it always lands on its feet. And so I'm going to take that and talk about this in that way. So the first step, a successful collaboration might sound quite obvious, but you really absolutely need fundamentally to be connected from a aims and ambitions perspective, whoever you partner with. So I think I've already covered why this matters to Aviva, and looking at rainforest and restoration as a way of achieving our overall aim as a business. It's immediately relevant to the reason our business exists. So we are swimming in our lane, if you like. And then we really needed to look no further than the Wildlife Trust as the ideal partner to collaborate with. An organisation with the experience, with the skills, with the knowledge, and with all the things that we lacked. So actually the partnership really works in that way. Importantly, we both have the same high level of ambition, and I think that is so, so important. And with a commitment and the importance that we give to this agenda. The sign that we both really meant it is that the partnership is a 100-year partnership. And I'll never forget this, but Craig said when he was reading the contract, 100-year partnership, he said he had to take a sip of whiskey before he signed it, which was really, really amazing. And I'll never forget that. I didn't see him do it, but I have a picture in my head, sitting there in his slippers on his couch. But yeah, no, it's incredible. But it does show that we are determined to be in this for the long haul. This isn't we're here today and then we're gone tomorrow, but we are in it for the long term. I'm not suggesting that every partnership needs to be centuries long, but it does matter that you are together in that partnership. Having the right contracts in place does matter. So that goes to the second element. And this is about data and capturing the kind of measuring things as you go along. And no one loves an old, chart or a spreadsheet, but they exist for a good reason. You need to know where you stand. What are you gunning for? And how do you measure it? And how do you get there? And how do you know when you've got there? And actually using that data to be able to then understand where you went wrong and where you might do things better the next time. So I think data and all that element really matters. For example, I think to bring this to life a bit more, as part of our work, the Aviva Rainforest Scholars Programme with the Wildlife Trust is engaged with universities from Bangor to Cambridge to Leeds to London, and as well as other research bodies and NGOs. It's paying for a PhD, and I think several PhDs actually, to explore real gaps in the science. So things like the first project investigates how mosses, lichens, and other plants growing on the trees continue to fight climate change. Something we don't know at the moment, but we will find out. And we're going to share all this data. This is going to be open source. The other areas of research will cover how to restore these habitats more effectively and how to make sure the process is inclusive, so that people, as well as nature, can reap the full benefits of this regeneration. And that brings me to the third element, which is people, and bringing everyone along the journey with you. I think that is absolutely important. I think the long-term sustainable success depends on including as many people as possible. That means colleagues in other parts of our business, that means our customers, that means communities who live and work around the sites that we're restoring as well. The more people who have a stake in what we're trying to do, the better. So in our case, we were excited to sponsor the Trust's Rainforest Inspired Garden, for example, at the RHS show this year. And that was to get more people to understand what we're trying to do. And actually, it was the people's choice, and they voted for it, which was amazing. And now that rain garden is going to Bristol Zoo. So in case you are in Bristol Zoo and want to see what that looked like, you're welcome to go there and see. We're also exploring how we can make the most of these opportunities for our kind of wider networks. And also, we give 3 days of volunteering to our people. So we get our people to go out and help with all the restoration as well, and really engage them. And that engagement is very important. The idea is that Aviva staff will team up, for example, with our brokers, etc., to go into these sites as well. So bringing people along the journey is very important. I've already had the bell, so I'm going to hurry up. And that brings me to my final thought. And that is, I'm really, really proud of this partnership. I think it's been amazing. We have the Wildlife Trusts here and our other sites around the country. What we've already achieved together in a fairly short period of time, it's only been 2 and a bit years, I think has completely exceeded what we thought we were going to get to. And that's been because we've all got together and it's been the right partnership, and that's why this has happened. The 100-year commitment we've signed up for gives us a long time to work on what we do and how we do it. But I'm impatient to go further and faster. So we will do that, and we will try and get to restoring more and more of the land going forward. But again, thank you so much for having me here, and what an incredible partnership to be a part of. Thank you very much.
Again, we could have 50 questions. First hand gets the question. Liz, who's ready? You were ready for that, Liz. You were ready. It's like a spring. We'll hear it all.
Thank you. Yesterday, I showed a slide of birch seedlings showing just what a huge difference the mycorrhiza made to the growth of the seedlings. So with improved growth, you get improved carbon capture. It seems to me that monitoring the fungi and the development of these forests and the relationships with fungi is one of the areas you should be looking at. And the Isle of Man Fungus Group would be very keen to be involved. Thank you.
Fantastic. It's amazing. Thank you very much. That's all about accelerating. So yes, the more involvement, the better. Thank you. Great.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Liz, I know there's someone in the room you have to introduce at coffee, but that is definitely on the list of things that's part of the monitoring of the project. So it's crucial. Right, I'm going to, before Graham kicks me, move quickly on to the next talk and invite 4 speakers up. I'll leave you to work out. So we've got David Quirk, Adrian Cowan, Ralph Peake, and Rebecca Keeley, please, who I know. And is it Adrian speaking? One speaker. Adrian?
My. I'll get the short straw. When we submitted our paper, we fancied we may have a long slot, so there might have been 4 speakers. But knowing that the slots are quite rightly, with so much interest, short slots, we're down to 1 speaker, and it's me, Dr. Dave Quirk. Didn't think it was appropriate to come to the Isle of Man all the way from Copenhagen. He's very cautious about his carbon footprint. So you have got me, and in the room also we have Ralph Peake. So I'll tell you who we are, and we'll quickly dip into this. You'll be glad to know that my bit is normally the climate change bit, and some of you will know that my climate change and the impacts of climate change on the Isle of Man in particular normally lasts 1 hour. So you are very fortunate that you're not going to be exposed to the punishment and pain of me talking for 1 hour this morning. So I'm a retired former senior meteorologist on the Isle of Man. After 40 years, the Isle of Man government's let me go. And I was invited by Ralph Peake, also at the Energy and Sustainability Centre with Dave Quirk, to join them as a director. We are a non-government organisation, a charity, and we do this because of our passion and interest in the environment and the future for the Isle of Man and beyond in using less fossil fuels and more in the way of renewable energy. So that's what we're about. I'm a meteorologist. Dave Quirk is a geologist, but also a general scientist and researcher at DTU, Danish Technical University in Copenhagen. And Rebecca, the youngest amongst us at the bottom there, is a geographer and researcher and a guru on social media, and we all need those these days. Ralph Peake is a former MHK on the Isle of Man and a businessman and a lead at the Chamber of Commerce on the Isle of Man. So we're a small team, but we bring a lot of skills and experience together to work at energy and sustainability on the Isle of Man. You can read that for yourself as to our description as to what we do. In addition to that, one of the key features we've enhanced over the last couple of years is education. I'm particularly pleased to work with schools, primary and secondary on the Isle of Man, talking to them about how we measure the weather, climate change and the impacts of climate change. And just recently we had a conference on the Isle of Man where we hosted well over 100 sixth form students, and we had a workshop after some presentations and listened to them. And at the end of the day we had a survey and we asked them who thought that climate change was very important, especially for the Isle of Man, and the show of hands was 100%. We also then asked something a bit more critical. After all the evidence we'd had discussed with them, we asked them how many of them would show their hand that they think the Isle of Man should be doing something about having more renewable energy as quickly as possible. And we had a show of 99%. I won't point fingers as to who didn't put their hand up, but maybe they didn't hear the question correctly. So we were very encouraged that a lot of young people on the Isle of Man think this is very important. They recognise climate change is happening and something has to be done. And the renewable energy pathway seems to be a sensible way forward. For us, as a wonderful lump of rock, an island in the Irish Sea, with natural resources, there is a way forward. And it can be done quite quickly and quite cost effectively. Quickly dipping into climate change, I give many presentations and people say, there's been had some climate change. And I think, well, yes, there has. On a geological timescale, there it is. There has always been climate change. There always will be. There's a natural timescale, long timescales, solar cycles, the Milankovitch cycle. There are natural disasters that cause short blips, such as volcanoes. The planet is active geologically. But all these changes, generally speaking, are long-term, long duration. They take place over many, many centuries. As you'll notice from that graph from Dave Quirk and colleagues, put together from data sets from around the world, international data sets that are accepted, it's the last bit of the graph, the little bit on the geological timescale that rises rapidly. And that's something we've not seen before on this planet. That is unusual. So when you get the climate change deniers, I'll use that word. There are many other words, but I won't use them in this audience. That is the evidence that people like Donald Trump ignore. I do not understand why, but there's many things he does that I don't understand. We have not seen that rate of change on this planet before. So that rate of change is due to man-made, forced climate change, anthropogenic change. And what are we doing to this planet that can cause that change? Essentially, we're pumping in more CO2 at a greater rate than would occur naturally on the planet. CO2, the big greenhouse gas. There's also methane being released by man, as well as nature. And the other thing that a warmer planet, a warmer atmosphere produces is more water vapor. Water vapor is also a greenhouse gas. So it's an accelerating process of greenhouse gases warming our planet. But the one thing that we can control the most, and should control the most, is stop burning so much fossil fuels. It is carbon dioxide going into our planet. There's some highlights of what happened on the planet. That yes, we have had an ice age. We've even had mini ice ages, such as the Vikings found out when they went to Greenland, and then it froze over again. But there we are, there's the turning point, the start of industrialization, when the planet all of a sudden was seeing an increasing rise in CO2 and therefore temperatures because of the greenhouse gas effect in our atmosphere. So a rising figure, a very worrying figure. Anything above 400 parts per billion is a huge figure, and it's rising still. So here we are at in excess of 428 parts per million in the atmosphere, and it's continuing to rise, of course, which is of concern, especially to our younger generations, that the planet is going to continue warming between now and the end of the century. No matter what we do, it will continue to warm. These greenhouse gases do not disappear. Even if you could stop burning fossil fuels next week, the atmosphere continues to warm. And there's more to it than that as to what we've done to the planet already. There's a legacy. And we at the Energy and Sustainability Centre, like you, most of you, are worried about the legacy. The impact here and now and in the near future, but the legacy is of great concern. If you burn all the world's oil and gas reserves, that will take us up to 500 parts per million in the atmosphere. You're talking about a massive temperature rise. And we can end up in the order, we talk about trying to limit the atmospheric warming and the temperature warming in the planet. It was agreed by politicians and others at COP events to 1.5 degrees Celsius. It's almost certainly going to now breach 2 Celsius. And the way we're going, quite realistically, 3 Celsius. And that makes many parts of the planet very difficult to live in as humans, never to mention the wildlife as well, on land and in the oceans. Right, thanks to Dave and his colleagues, the researchers, the scientists. Here's a graph that puts it all together, and you can see the correlation, the very clear correlation of the amount of CO2 you've got in the atmosphere and the temperature and other things that are happening on the planet. So down on the left-hand side of the graph, it starts in 1850 pre-industrial period, considered to be 1850 to 1900. And then we have the industrial periods, which are quite highly evident on the graph as you go through the CO2 emissions and the rise that's correlated to that off surface temperature. And so we get to where we are now, and we have also the physical effects on the ground that are caused by this warming planet, the warming air, the warming ocean, and that includes sea level rise, the melting of glaciers and ice caps, the further release of naturally locked in methane and CO2 from the bottom of lakes and ocean beds. And it goes on and on. It's a continuous rise. And I think you can see that it's an increasing rate of rise. Now, wildlife and humans, we can adapt given enough time. We can use engineering and technology. Wildlife can't. They need more time. We might be able to adapt in a period of decades and continue to do something and live in places. Other parts of the planet, we might not be able to live. We might have to migrate. There's another problem, migration. But the natural world cannot cope with that rate of change. It will suffer. Species will die out. They are dying out because they cannot adapt to the rate of change on the planet. 5 minutes already, but I've got an hour. So, zooming on, how we've evidenced this climate change on the Isle of Man. Up across the top there, this is a snapshot of some of the slides I normally deliver. Professor Ed Hawkins' climate change stripes, which are used widely. The Isle of Man has got exactly the same demonstration to be illustrated, that in the last 20 to 30 years, our average temperature above the long-term climate average period of 30 years previous, we're warming up. We've had record-breaking temperatures now over the last decade. 6 of our years have been the hottest on record, and you can use 20 years and you get the same sort of figures. We are warming at this rate of change in this part of the planet. We make the headlines. The Manx spring was the warmest and sunniest on record. Woo! And we've just had our warmest summer on record, although a lot of people denied that. It wasn't a good summer, but they forget that we're measuring temperature, and that's day and night. We're not measuring sunshine, we're measuring temperature. And the nights have been exceptionally mild, especially the winter. Our seasons are changing, or almost disappearing. Seasonality is changing. Our winters are now very mild. And we end up doing a stark comparison there, 1976, because people go, 1976 was better. Well, we go, yeah, it was exceptional. It was exceptional, but it's not exceptional anymore to have a warm summer in any part of the planet. Exceptional in 1976 for parts of Europe, including the British Isles, but in 2022, many more parts of the planet were much warmer than normal. There's some variation in the oceans, but that's due to natural variation. Talking of oceans, the ocean heat content is on the rise, and that is where most of the climate change energy, the extra energy being trapped on the planet, is stored in the oceans, massive amounts of energy, and that's not going to disappear very quickly. So it's going to be here for the rest of the century, and it's still rising. If we look in that middle frame there, we talk about ocean marine heat waves around the British Isles, a few degrees above average, 4, 5, even 6 degrees above average around the British Isles, part of the components that added to our summer record-breaking temperatures, including this year and the year before. Our comparison of temperatures show that we are definitely warmer across every month in the last 30 years than the previous 45 years. Winter and summer, every month is warmer. There's the impacts down on the bottom right. The same for the Isle of Man as many places. Concerns about flooding, concerns about droughts, heat waves, storms. These weather events are made more likely because of climate change. The atmosphere and the ocean are driven by more energy. Talking of energy, I might even get into this time frame now that I'm here. Dave Quirk and his colleagues on many islands have collaborated to come up with this. It is very complex, but there are many highlights in here, and do go to our website for further details, you can study it further. There's plenty of information there, reports and news items at our website, so you can explore it at your leisure. But these 29 islands ranked in progress of transition to renewables, it's rather embarrassing for the Isle of Man and maybe one or two other islands in the British Isles. Now, I normally like to jump around the stage, so excuse me, I don't like using laser pointers. If you haven't noticed it already, the Isle of Man down at the bottom there with Jersey. I'm sorry, Jersey. You know, our Danish friends are proving the way forward. Heathrow, Samso, and also Bonholm, Orkney and Egg, they have transitioned to a renewable energy. And they've got so much renewable energy, mainly in terms of wind and energy storage, they can export it. And in the meanwhile, their energy prices become cheaper, much cheaper. Look at that. They've got cheap energy, but unfortunately, oh dear, what are we doing? Highest energy costs. We need to move forward. Potential for energy self-sufficiency is on the right. And believe it or not, the Isle of Man has got a resource to move forward. We can take the natural resource of wind and solar and move forward. In fact, we've got the potential for the capacity factor to be the highest on the list. If we would just tap into using our natural resource of wind and solar as quickly as possible, we'd be on a winner. And we'd have resilience, security, sustainability, and sustainability equals well-being. Well-being for us individually, as a community, the Isle of Man, and the well-being for businesses, and the well-being for the Isle of Man government. And all the islands could do this on a renewable pathway. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm being a bad time manager, so I'm going to move on. I think that's been really good to reinforce some of what we already know is happening with climate change, and also just to highlight just how important it is to every individual island. Every island is part of the solution. You know, we can do it. You know, little islands can make a difference. Last talk before break is to introduce Dominic Wall. Dominic, where are you? There he is. Dominic from Deloitte. I'm going to call him another friend who I've worked with for some time in the Isle of Man. So I'm going to introduce Dominic from Deloitte to tell us about the work that they've been doing in the Isle of Man.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dominic Wall, and I work as a manager in Deloitte Global Sustainability and Sustainability Reporting and Assurance Readiness team. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today speaking in front of such a passionate group of individuals about the environment. So to kind of set the narrative arc up a bit here, because the world I'm from is it's about transparency and full disclosure. I promise you there'll only be 3 slides of doom and gloom. And, you know, I think it's important that while we acknowledge the severity of the situation we're in, if we can kind of acknowledge the progress being made by corporates, civil society, policy, you know, we can move from more of a morbid to a motivating point of view. And I actually saw Andrew Douglas wrote about this. He's the founder of Global Canopy, and he kind of put it this way, which was quite apt, is we need less gloom and more boom. And that's kind of boom in investment towards a nature positive economy. So as you can see here, the Live on Planet report in 2024 highlights a study of about 5,500 vertebrate species. And there's been a decline in approximately 73% since the middle of the Industrial Revolution, up until about 2020. in particular, the UK has lost 50% of its biodiversity, 70% of its ancient woodlands, 90% of its natural woodlands. We've seen a decline in 92% of our seagrass and 97% decline in our flower-rich grasslands. So, you know, your wildflower meadows. Yeah, we go. Just going to flick to this one. So, you know, based on the World Economic 2025 risk report, you can see that 2 out of 10 risks in the short term are environmental, and basically 50%, 5 out of 10 of the risks in a kind of longer term time frame, 10 years, are environmental. So if I can just to direct your attention to that kind of chart on the left there, I'm sure many people are familiar with it. So we've breached 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries to regulate stability and resilience in the Earth system. And I guess the question that I'm going to attempt to answer today is, you know, what does that mean from a financial perspective? What does climate and nature mean in terms of investment in companies, the economy, and for investors? So the investment required to reverse biodiversity decline by 2030 is approximated at close to $1 trillion by 2030. Over 50% of global GDP is moderately or highly dependent on nature. We've seen that in 2 studies now. And I guess, you know, bringing it closer to home, which is quite a stunning statistic here, is that the deterioration of natural capital in the UK could lead to about 12%, circa 12% loss in GDP. And if we look at how that compares to other crises, such as, let's say, the global financial crisis, that was circa 5% loss in GDP in the UK. And COVID-19 was a circa 11% loss in the GDP. So we've seen the most severe risk come from nature in terms of loss to actual GDP. In terms of kind of what entities are doing, in terms of how they are linking this to their financial statements, what we've seen is, you know, you can account for it in your income statement. There will be higher costs due to raw material shortages, operational disruption from extreme weather degradation and events. There's going to be in your balance sheets, we've seen devaluation of assets due to nature-related risks and liability of environmental degradation. And then in cash flows, we'll increasingly start to see increased capital expenditure on regulatory compliance and investment in sustainability initiatives from entities trying to kind of catch up. And to build resilience, a lot of forward-thinking companies are kind of integrating nature into their corporate strategy, and they're doing that by integrating nature risk into their enterprise risk management frameworks. They are also aligning financial planning to nature-related dependencies in their business models, and then setting nature-positive targets for corporate strategies. So we've talked a lot about risks here, and I think I'd be remiss not to mention the huge opportunity we have. We often neglect the opportunities. So the World Economic Forum states that a transition to a nature-positive economy in just 3 socio-economic systems, and that's energy, infrastructure, food, land, and ocean use, could result in $10 trillion of economic opportunities and generate 395 million jobs by 2030. So I've thrown some pretty large numbers at you there, but what does that mean? Like, I think to put it into perspective, you could basically build the London Array, which is one of the world's largest offshore wind farms, 4,536 times, and you'll still have enough money left over to buy every single person in the UK a Patagonia jacket. In terms of jobs, that's 11.5 times the entire workforce of the UK. So I'm just going to skip these because I'm conscious of time. I think it's would be good to kind of acknowledge on the kind of reporting and regulatory requirement side of things. What we are seeing is a clear transition from climate to nature, and an acknowledgement that they are both inextricably linked. So a lot of the existing climate frameworks that we've been seeing have been leveraged for nature frameworks that are emerging at the moment. So I'm just going to highlight a few frameworks. So in 2017, as you can see there, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures was launched, and that considers climate factors through the pillars of governance, risk management, strategy, and metrics and targets. And those are really foundational frameworks because those pillars have been the kind of fundamental framework for kind of emerging standards and frameworks that we've seen. In 2022, the Kunming-Montreal Agreement was signed, and that brought about the Global Biodiversity Framework, and some notable targets there are to restore 30% of the degraded ecosystems and conserve 30% of land, water, and seas by 2030. And then in 2023, we can see there's the launch of the TNFD, the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, which also is based on those 4 pillars of TCFD. So there's a significant amount of sustainability reporting provisions with over about 600 different frameworks and kind of standards. And that's presented challenges kind of in the past in terms of comparability and quality of sustainability reporting in the market. And what we've seen is the international financial reporting standards kind of set out to converge the most prominent standards and frameworks and created the International Sustainability Standards Board, the ISSB. The ISSB was launched in June 2023. They have IFRS 1, which is more general sustainability-related financial disclosures, and then IFRS 2, which is building on the great work of TCFD, the climate-related financial disclosures. It's excellent to see that the TNFD are working with the ISSB to integrate their considerations into the ISSB, and it's anticipated that the Standard 3 and Standard 4 is going to be kind of focused on natural capital and then also human capital. There's a framework called the Task Force on Inequality and Socially Related Financial Disclosures. So yeah, very much more all-encompassing than just a focus on climate. On this slide, I'll just highlight a few kind of other frameworks and standards that are very much present. And I think it's important to acknowledge that Europe has very much led the way. And I guess with the introduction of the sustainable finance package, so I'll speak to about 2 out of 5 of those kind of standards that were introduced. And the big one was the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which mandates reporting on the European Sustainability Reporting Standards. And they require entities that are in scope to obtain limited assurance on their disclosures, which I think is a real fundamental shift, because obtaining assurance kind of ensures that there's a high integrity in terms of what non-financial reporting information is being communicated in their disclosures, and it also mitigates greenwashing. I will say that this is kind of contingent to the omnibus proposal, which has been a piece of legislation in Europe, and that aims to kind of significantly reduce the amount of sustainability data points and due diligence reporting requirements for entities that I think they're trying to become a bit more competitive and take the burden of reporting obligations for the UK. Just touching on the ISSB again at the bottom there, that's on a jurisdictional basis. So we see countries such as Australia, Brazil, Mexico having to report on kind of an adapted version of the ISSB. And the UK actually had a consultation which closed this week to seek views on the standards and whether entities should be reporting on them. So at the moment, premium and standard listed companies are required to report on climate-related financial disclosures. in line with the TCFD recommendations. So essentially what we anticipate is a shift from TCFD being focused on climate to ISSB, which is general sustainability, with the potential to incorporate natural capital and human capital considerations. And the last thing I would just like to highlight here is, in the alignment column, as you can see, there's a high degree of interoperability between between the standards and frameworks. You can see the ESRS, the science-based targets, a network which is focused on biodiversity and nature-backed standards for entities, as well as the ISSB all integrate TNFD considerations. This is just a good infographic of the kind of growth that we've seen in the entities adopting the TNFD. Over 500 organizations representing $17 trillion in assets under management have now adopted it. And I think based on the incredible growth that we've seen in market adoption of TCFD, it's not unreasonable to assume that TNFD is going to be following the same kind of point of view. I'm going to quickly touch on this. About 2 minutes left. Okay. So in 2024, Deloitte hosted its inaugural Nature Client Greenhouse, and that brought together 33 participants from across the real economy and finance, all representing collectively 10 trillion pounds on assets under management. And these are kind of some of the feedback we've seen from them is they're all focusing on majority strategy and governance at this stage and collecting data. The challenges that we are seeing those entities incur are around operational transformation, data and technology, and then reporting and disclosure. Assurance hasn't really been a feature, although one entity was quite, had it at front of mind when they were kind of collecting their data, making sure their systems and controls are robust enough so that they can one day obtain assurance. And on the last slide, I just wanted to kind of highlight some key takeaways on what you could perhaps do and where you can start. Read the Deloitte articles on the business case for board engagement and nature, which suggests 5 key actions to integrate nature and corporate governance. The Isle of Man Financial Services Authority has published guidance on the risks of climate and nature and their expectations in terms of entities incorporating those. And I guess towards the end of that document, it's quite interesting. There's a summary of actions to be taken. And I think based on this, considering a materiality assessment would be a good step, and seeing what kind of climate and nature risks could potentially impact your business is an excellent starting point. And lastly, there's a link to join the Climate Collective, where we kind of distribute newsletters and learning events. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll be happy to field any questions on the floor.
I'm going to time manage and answer a question that I would have asked him anyway. I'm just going to highlight before we break for a comfort break and grab a coffee that we've got Deloitte in the room. We've also got KPMG in the room, Simon Sheath. And if you don't know their world, they work for 2 of the big 4. Hands up if you know what the big 4 are. I'm not going to ask you. Yeah, the business people will, but those that don't, these are 4 companies that work globally. Both their companies work in over 150 countries, territories, nations, including 11 UK overseas territories and crown dependencies. They've got offices there. They do major work internationally. And just have a moment to think that they're now referencing and driving towards the Global Biodiversity Framework, the document that came out of COP15, all about how the world needs to fix biodiversity. And the big 4 are championing this. And yet not everyone in the conservation sector even knows the Global Biodiversity Framework exists. Now, that's part of my new job to try and change that. But that is just a moment of how that is important, and that would not have been the case 10 years ago. So it's a huge opportunity for our whole sector to partner and collaborate with businesses to really drive a change. Right, I've time managed badly, Graham, I'm sorry. But I think everyone's had the double bell today and cracked a bit, so I'm not totally taking it. But I am going to ask you all if you could have a quick comfort and coffee break. we'll creep a little bit. So it's 1:45 now. So if you could get coffees, go to the loo, come back. We'll start at 5 past. Okay, we're going to start bang on 5 past. Thank you.